Hi, Chef Joe with Healthy Kids Inc. and today we're going to be making a beef tenderloin with balsamic green beans and Parmesan roasted potatoes. So the very first thing we want to do is get our potatoes ready. We've got a baking sheet here lined with a little bit of aluminum foil and we've sprayed it with cooking spray. We're now going to season our potatoes before we put them on. So I've got some new red potatoes here that we've just sliced into bite-sized pieces. And what we're going to do is drizzle these with a little bit of olive oil. Got a little bit of kosher or sea salt. Also going to use a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper. Okay, we're going to kind of give this a little bit of a toss to distribute the seasoning evenly. Everybody gets nice and shiny and coated with the oil. Okay, now the next thing we're going to use a little bit of dried thyme. If you have fresh, you can use it as well. That would be just fine. Really, any herbs that you really like, if you have some rosemary laying around, this will be a good time to use it up. Kind of to each their own. If you're using dried, make sure you crush it in your hands as you sprinkle it in. It'll kind of release some of the trapped flavor inside of there. Give that another toss. Herb roasted potatoes just like this are something that I make at home all the time. It's one of my favorite go-to potato dishes. I'm going to add some freshly grated Parmesan cheese. Sprinkle a little bit in, give it a toss. If you have any that are kind of stuck together, just make sure you break them apart. Okay, now we're going to spread these out. Give it a shake, make sure you've got a single even layer for your potatoes here. Our oven's preheated to 450 degrees. This should only take about 10 to 15 minutes for these to become nice and tender to a fork or to the touch, the tip of a knife to them. If it comes in and out clean, you should be able to pull those from the oven at that point. Let them cool. Okay, these are going into our preheated oven for about 10 to 15 minutes. All right, we'll move on to the next step. All right, the next step is we want to begin working on our balsamic green beans. The steak's going to be one of the very last things we do because we're really just going to sear it and then allow it to come up to the doneness that you prefer, whether it is medium all the way to well, and then this dish comes together very quickly. So we have a large saute pan here over about medium heat that's had a little bit of time to kind of come up to temperature while we were working on our potatoes. I'm going to move the oil around a little bit. And I've got just a little bit of oil because we are using a pat of butter here. I'm going to spread this around. This is going to become our sauce. Just kind of shake that around, distribute that evenly. All right. Next thing, we've got some onions. We have both white and red that we've sliced. Add a little bit salt to these. We're going to allow these to acquire a little bit of color and to soften up a little bit. Then we'll go in with our garlic and shallot. We also have a cast iron pan heating up on the back of the stove to sear off our steaks, and you want to get that screaming hot. So if you see a little bit of smoke, that's okay because we've already oiled the cast iron pan, so a little bit of smoke is actually to be expected there. These are probably going to cook down for the next 5 to 6 minutes or so until they get kind of nice and soft, and the garlic and shallots will go in. You just want to kind of keep giving these a stir, make sure nothing's burning. That little sprinkle of salt that we added too is actually going to suck some of the moisture out of these and help those to cook. So sometimes you'll see us adding, a pinch of salt here and there to something, and you'll think, maybe I don't like things that salty. Well, we're not always adding salt to get a salty flavor. Sometimes salt actually serves other purposes, as in this case, helping to soften these onions. Salt actually, draws moisture out of whatever you put it on, be it, your steak or chicken, fish, any of your vegetables. So keep that in mind. All right, we're going to allow this to continue to cook down for a few minutes here. All right, so while our onions are softening, we have our fillets here. These were rather large and thick fillets, so what I've done is I've went ahead and cut them in half to make them a little bit smaller, and that'll make them cook a little bit quicker. Got to think, if you have a really thick steak, it's going to take quite a while for it to cook through. We'll get the outside done, but then the inside would still be extremely rare. That's okay if that's what you're going for, but in this case, we're not looking to do that. So we've cut these down, and we've packed them dry with a paper towel to remove any excess moisture. And they've also been sitting here on the counter for the last 10 to 15 minutes to kind of temper or come up to room temp. So now I'm going to season these. A little bit of salt. We're going to do this to both sides. Fresh cracked black pepper. Beef and pepper are a classic flavor combination. If you pepper a steak like this and simply sear it and serve it, in France it's called steak au pois, and it will be rather expensive in a restaurant. So you're getting a high quality dish in the comfort of your own home. Okay, you can kind of just pat that on. All right. Our onions are starting to get nice and soft. That's what we're looking for. Just a few more minutes on these. Let them get a little bit more color on them to really develop the flavor. At this point, though, we are ready to go ahead and add in our garlic and shallot. Stir that in. This is extremely, extremely fragrant, which is good. That means you're really building a lot of flavor. You can really smell the garlic as soon as it hits the pan. You can smell those shallots, smell of these onions cooking down together. And the natural sugars in the onions start to break down when you get the browning, and that really develops flavor. You kind of understand a little bit more why things taste so good. All right, just about where we want these. The very next thing that we're going to do is actually add some beef broth. You could use chicken stock if you had it. If you didn't have anything else, it would be a good vessel to carry flavor. But typically when you're using beef, you're going to want to go ahead and try to pair it with actually beef broth. And we're using a low sodium, no preservatives added prepared beef broth or beef stock. So we're going to go ahead and add about a half a cup here. I'm going to bring my heat up. And then the next thing that we're going to do, we have our nice fresh green beans. We have a couple tablespoons of balsamic vinegar as well. Let this cook for a couple minutes. All right. I'm going to go ahead and add in my beans. See how quickly that the beans start to turn a nice and bright green. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and add in our balsamic vinegar. All right, and this just needs a few more minutes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to transfer these to the back of the stove. All right, we're going to set these on the back burner, transfer our cast iron skillet to the front. Going to let the liquid there continue to cook down. We're going to now cook our steaks. First, let's check our potatoes. Check them. They need just a little bit longer. I can still tell, just a little tough. So we're going to let those continue to cook. Okay, I'm going to speak a little bit louder now because I am going to go ahead and turn on my overhead vent. I'm going to turn it on low just in case we get some smoke. All right, so the very next thing that you want to do is take your steak. You've already oiled this. You don't want any oil on your steak. You want to place it flat down. You'll hear that sizzle. If you don't, your pan is not hot enough. And you need to remove the steak and wait until it is nice and hot. And you don't want to overcrowd this. So I'm only going to do 2 at a time. Then we'll sear off the other 2. And now at this point, resist the temptation to mess with your steak. Let it get a nice sear on that first initial side that you place down. Then it will let you know when it's ready to flip over. It'll come loose on its own. So we're going to let that go for a minute. All right. So at this point, you really don't want to cook your beans too much longer because you do want to leave some crunch on those beans because you've got the variance in texture between your soft cooked onions and then your crunchy beans. So at this point, I'm going to pull these off the heat and allow those to set as our steaks finish. Our potatoes should be just about there anytime now. All right, ready to give our steaks a flip. Got that nice sear on there. That's exactly what you're looking for. At this point, you can turn your heat down a little bit. Check our potatoes. Okay, our potatoes are ready. All right. Got our potatoes. All right, at this point, we're ready to pull our steaks and allow them to rest. Resting your product here is very, very important. Allow those juices to redistribute evenly throughout the meat. But we are going to go ahead and begin searing our other steaks. We'll place those on just as before. It's very much a set it and forget it kind of thing until it releases. We've got our beans and our onions here ready to go. Our steak is ready and resting, and our potatoes are done. So at this point, all that's left to do is to finish these last two steaks up. We'll plate this up and show you the finished product in just a couple of minutes.